Welcome to the Wales Tech Week cluster stage, supported by CS Connected, representing the world's first compound semiconductor cluster based here in Wales. We hear about clusters all the time, but what is a cluster? In general terms, a cluster refers to a group of things that have something in common and are usually closely located. During the COVID pandemic, we have often heard the term used to describe local outbreaks of coronavirus infections, which has obvious negative connotations for the term cluster. But in a business and technology context, clusters are seen as having a major impact on innovation, productivity, and economic growth. The outbreak of the Industrial Revolution in the UK during the 18th and 19th centuries could be seen as an early example of a cluster. We then saw many examples of concentrations of new industrial sectors, from automotive, centred around Detroit, to technology born in Silicon Valley. Not so far away from us here today, Hay-on-Wye serves as a good example of a cluster outbreak with its high concentration of bookshops. One may question whether Hay-on-Wye is a good location to set up a bookshop when there is so much competition. But once a cluster reaches a critical mass, it becomes the go-to location for attracting talent, customers, and other associated resources. Business clusters tend to be unplanned. Most clusters form around a central point of expertise or innovation. Detroit only became known as Motor City following Henry Ford's pioneering use of assembly lines, and Silicon Valley was born out of innovative technologies emerging from the likes of Stanford University. The compound semiconductor cluster here in Wales was formed around solid research facilities at Cardiff and Swansea universities, and key anchor companies such as IQE, Newport Wafer Fab, Microchip and SPTS. Like the Hay-on-Wye example, most clusters comprise of entities that compete with each other, whilst sharing some common attributes. A unique feature of the compound semiconductor cluster is that it has evolved from being a random group of entities into a semi-planned cluster with the addition of organisations such as Compound Semiconductor Centre and the CSA Catapult, along with new businesses including Rockley Photonics and Microlink Devices. The result is an enhanced cluster, which is more of a community that is characterised by multiple collaborations and shared resources, creating a unique and innovative ecosystem. Wales is a small, concentrated country which lends itself to supporting clusters, and it is a pleasure for the CS Connected Compound Semiconductor Cluster to be joined during Wales Tech Week by other clusters forming around technologies such as resilience and cybersecurity, blockchain, and many, many more. I hope the cluster stage provides you with inspiration and opportunities.
Welcome to Wales Tech Week 2021. Thank you to our partners. Enjoy the session.
Hello and croeso pawb. Welcome everyone to this session at Wales Tech Week, looking at how we use tech to enhance accessibility, both for creatives and for audiences. And we are here on the creative cluster stage today. I'm Vicki. My pronouns are she and her. I have medium length blonde hair. I'm wearing dark brown glasses, and I have a shirt that has got pink stripes on it today. I'm project manager for Creative Cardiff, and we are really pleased to be hosting the session today. Creative Cardiff is a Cardiff University initiative set up in 2015, and we are a network for creative individuals and organisations in the city. And we will pop the link to our website where you can find out more about the range of work that we do and how you can get involved with the kind of work that we do. We're joined today by two British Sign Language interpreters who will be signing along with us today. And you will also have the options if you'd like to have captions as part of the event, and we'll put the information for that into the chat box. So you'll need to click an external link which will allow you to have captions if you have Google Chrome as your browser. So welcome everyone. I'm really delighted to be invited by Wales Tech Week to arrange a session for their creative cluster stage today. And it struck me that it would be a really good opportunity to showcase some of the fantastic work and developments that have been happening in relation to using technology to enhance accessibility, both for creatives during their creative process and also for audiences. And I'm hoping through the session that we'll be exploring a little bit about, well, what do we mean by enhancing accessibility? You know, who is that for? How rich can we make those experiences for everyone? At Creative Cardiff, we've been really learning a lot about this particularly over the past year. We worked on a project called Our Creative Place, which was a project where we commissioned 12 creatives to tell their story about being a creative in their local area. And we worked with an access consultant, Vicki Davies, on that project. And working with Vicki and the creatives really kind of enhanced our understanding of trying to achieve a multi-sensory experience and the ways in which we can do that when we're hosting events, when we're hosting performances, as creatives working with different technologies. And so that really has kind of sparked my interest and my understanding a little bit more, always learning. And obviously, this is within the context of the pandemic. You know, much of what we've consumed, culture and arts-wise, has gone online. And has relied on tech and technology and technological understanding to access it. And whilst this has broadened access for many, it has at the same time disadvantaged many, those with limited digital capital, things like access to a computer, broadband, and those kind of difficulties. And I came across an article this week, actually, it was in the Irish Times, and it was talking about how the digital world has given some people voices and taken others away. And it was written by Thomas Murphy, who was on the board of Inclusion Ireland, and he was talking a lot about, you know, access to hardware, the digital divide, and that becoming greater for some. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that during the session today. So we're really pleased to welcome 5 speakers today who've kindly agreed to share a little bit about the work that they do. And in a moment, each of those speakers will share a brief overview of some of their work and some of their findings. And following that, I've got some questions to spark conversation, and then we'd love to open out for questions from the attendees. So if you have any questions or any thoughts or prompts, please do put them into the chat box, and we'll definitely come to those later in the session. It's being recorded as well today. So first up then, if I can welcome Ali, John and Hannah McPake here to talk to us about their 2020 project, Rise. Over to you, ladies.
Hi, thanks, Vicky. I'm Hannah. I'm a white woman in my 40s. I have shoulder-length bleached blonde hair. I'm wearing a black top, and I'm sat in the Yellobrick office at a social distance from
Ali. Hi, I'm Ali. I'm a 40-year-old white woman with red hair and blue eyes, wearing a navy blue top.
So yeah, we're here to talk a little bit about Project Rise. I'm going to talk a little bit about the origin and kind of the concept, and then Ali is going to talk a little bit more about some of the practicalities the platform we used access as well. So could we start the slides, please? Thanks. So Rise was a live broadcast at dawn. It took place in 3 parts. Part 1 was a package that the audience received through the post. Part 2 was a live audio broadcast at sunrise, featuring a live performer broadcasting from their home, accompanied by a pre-recorded soundtrack. Part 3 was a video link sent by email to all audience after the broadcast that revealed more of the narrative, a link to a bespoke website and a short video. So this is the pack that the audience received through the post. It included a tea bag, a scented candle, a postcard with a quote and a kind of introductory message. Rise explored themes of connectivity, myth, and ritual. It was a collaboration between myself, Ali, and Julian Sykes, and it was supported by the Arts Council of Wales. We ran 5 test performances during December 2020.
If we can take the slides off, that would be great. Thank you.
Fab. So Rise was kind of a continuation of an ongoing collaboration that Ali and myself have had over the past couple of years, exploring kind of digital and live performance and the combination between those things. For Rise, we really wanted to focus on a project that was all about well-being, and it was a multi-platform experience, a multi-sensory project that combines the tactile and the digital. It was obviously made over last year when everything shifted within the context of the pandemic, our practice shifting online, not knowing if we were going to be able to make work, what that work was going to look like, and also dealing with kind of remote working and suddenly finding ourselves at home. And Ali and I found ourselves talking a lot about feeling disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from our work, disconnected from other people, disconnected from the world. And we wanted to create something that helped or began to help reconnect that disconnect. We found ourselves looking a lot at sunrise and sunsets, going on a lot of walks, rerouting ourselves in nature. We both also do a lot of yoga, and we were really searching for those moments of pause where you kind of step outside of yourself and have a moment to reflect. And we kind of noticed that this was going on a lot across all social media platforms, pictures of sunrises, people showing pictures of walks they'd gone on. So we began to explore kind of rituals around walking, labyrinth walking, journeys of self-discovery, Swedish year walking, and thinking about creating an experience rooted in those ideas. I guess a big thing to say about how we worked last year was the pace of work massively slowed. As theatre makers, we're used to being given a deadline, finding out you've got money, everything happens at this speed all the time. And actually the world had totally slowed down and making work slowed down. And the length of development on this project was probably 2-3 times really what we'd usually do. And that felt really kind of enriching, and like the project perhaps became something more than it could have been because of that time. So yeah, we came up with this idea of a walk. We found a location, the wetlands in Cardiff Bay. We knew we wanted to work with audio, and we knew that a live experience was really important to us. So we set out thinking we were going to create a live dawn walk for a very small audience listening on their own phones or devices to a live actor. But of course, things continued to shift. We went back in and out of lockdowns. It didn't feel appropriate or safe. And so again, we reimagined the project for an at-home experience, which I think we would both agree turned out to be something much kind of more richer than our original idea, and also much more accessible to audiences. And that's kind of developed a whole strand of work and thinking, which we're continuing to explore. Ali?
So in terms of how to deliver it technically, we needed to have something that would enable us to broadcast live to multiple people at the same time. Easy for people to access for them, either on their mobile phones or on a computer at home, since it had shifted to what would be an at-home experience. And the budget that we had was very small. So there was kind of a lot of technical and creative parameters that we had to sort of consider. So we looked at investigating existing platforms. We found a podcasting app during our research that would allow us to basically broadcast live to unlimited audiences, as well as mix music underneath the voice of the main actor. So more importantly, that technology allowed us to then run not only rehearse, but also run the project remotely, so we could all be in our bubbles, in our houses. So our live actor, Laura, for example, was in Pontypridd, performing the script, whilst myself and Hannah were in one person in the office, the other person at home, basically managing then the live mix of the audio and also kind of facilitating any troubleshooting / admin around audience interaction. So to talk to each other, we just had a WhatsApp group. So we queued via WhatsApp, and that kind of worked really well. And I think a lot of the things that we talked about during this time is that sometimes the simplest ideas are often the best. If you kind of strip things back, you end up having a much richer project. So I think we also, during this period of time, were really interested in how can we hack existing platforms and subvert them in ways in which perhaps the use of them, the everyday use of them, is subverted. So the podcasting app that we used was Podbean, and that is predominantly very traditional podcasts, kind of amateur sort of radio shows. So I guess what we did was take that medium and that form and create an immersive, enriching audio experience, very much influenced by theatre and storytelling. I guess alongside that, we were very keen to make the project accessible. So alongside the main part of the project, we created a tactile version of the experience for deaf audiences. And this was a personalised letter. And within the letter, there was other tactile elements like leaves, flowers, pressed flowers, photographs, and other things that we'd pinned around the letter that referred to what they were reading. And we invited them to open that letter at the same time that people were listening to the audio. And some of those audiences did choose to log on to Podbean as well at the same time. The good thing about Podbean was that there was a chat function as well, which people could interact with. And it sort of created a sense of community, because on the app you could see people arriving. So that sense of arrival for something created quite an intimate experience, I guess, and that sense of connection. So being able to see each other, even if it was just a name, you had a sense of another presence within that space in your home. And we also invited people right at the end of the piece to make us a promise about tomorrow, which was based on some of the narrative that our actor Laura performed. And people then decided whether they wanted to talk to each other at that point or not. It was entirely up to them how they interacted. And I think while we developed this piece, it was a initial stage project piece, particularly for the accessibility materials. We consulted with 4 access consultants who have given us some fantastic feedback on when we do this piece again, these are the things that we should have in place moving forward. So for example, we've created a visual impaired guide for the piece as well. So there's loads of things that we can move forward with when we do the piece again, which is basically the plan. And yeah, in essence, I think all of these things together, it was a really interesting experience creatively for me and Hannah working remotely, but then also looking at how do we make work within this new realm, really, where people's tastes and behaviours have changed so dramatically in terms of their relationship with digital and entertainment. So it was a really exciting creative challenge in many ways to look at how we could create work within, very tight constraints. And I guess the next stages for the project for us is we are hopefully going to repeat Rise, taking on board the advice from the Access consultants, and create a companion piece called Set, which will look at rituals and mythology and storytelling around sunset. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Thank you very much.
Amazing, thank you both. It's so interesting to find out more about it and to hear how you've combined the technology with the real live tactile stuff. And I'd love to pick up on that a little bit later on as well. So thank you for sharing that. We're going to hear next now from Leigh Davies, who describes himself on his Twitter as an all-round whipper-upper of creative goodies who delivers stories and design experiences. So Leigh, if you're okay to share some of the projects that you've been working on, please.
Can you hear me now, guys?
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Leigh Davies. I'm a sort of self-proclaimed systems creative. So I work as a creative producer and an educator, basically, who delivers stories and designs experiences. I'm a white male in my early 30s who is currently wearing a white t-shirt, brown mottled circular glasses, and I have a lot of dark brown curly hair all over my head. Now, you might already be asking, actually, what is a systems creative? And in regards to my work within kind of considering the accessibility of creative work, that's kind of been my main project, really, is kind of developing this new professional identity. So I've been working on this new kind of professional identity to kind of better understand and contextualize my creative practice as a multidisciplinary producer. So to be a systems creative, really, to kind of give you the quick description of that, it's basically, to be a systems creative is to resort to a mixture of creative disciplines, not as identities, but as affordances or tools. And it's kind of through this approach that it's become possible to design and assemble more complex and interesting and rich artifacts and creative experiences that aren't necessarily bogged down by the established expectations of the creative disciplines that we work in as producers. So 5 years ago, you probably would have heard me describe myself as a whole mixture of things, such as, a musician or a composer or a graphic designer or, creative technologist or animator, and a whole heap of other things. But through this kind of identity of the systems creative, multidisciplinary skills has become more of my creative spice rack, I suppose, to use an analogy. So instead of being a musician, I deal with sound, or deal with visuals instead of being a graphic designer. And this goes all the way down through to things such as gesture or haptics, and even more kind of uncommon sensory perceptions like the interoceptive sense. So that's kind of the defining factor, really, of my my work and life as a producer, is that I no longer kind of think of myself as a multidisciplinary practitioner, but more as someone who deals with all of our senses as a creative producer. And I think the most valuable thing I've learned as a result of that is that suddenly, by thinking about yourself as a creative producer in that way, your work starts to become more access inherent. So the opportunities for individuals to, from all walks of life, really, to access your work or engage with your work or, receive your work or contribute to your work is just automatically heightened, because you're dealing with, multimodality. You're dealing with all of the modes of media. You're dealing with all of the modes of communication, and you're dealing with all of the modes of our sensory perception as humans. And that's been a really liberating kind of redefinition really in recent years of my own practice. And I just want to share with you today just 2 projects that's kind of emerged as a result of that new outlook on my the way I kind of conduct myself as a creative within this industry really. So I've got some slides. So if the wonderful Sophie could bring those, oh, look at that. There we go. Fast as a bullet. So on the screen, we have the first of the projects I want to share with you very briefly here. So this is a personal project that I developed at the end of 2019, which is called Places. And Places is basically a series of interactive instrument sculptures that promote curiosity, exploration, and play. Now, the Places was funded by the Arts Council of Wales, and I worked through this project largely from the end of 2019 through into 2020 for the first phase of the work. And this first sprint of this project saw me basically assemble a number of, as I say, interactive sculptures that were predominantly 95% of these structures were made out of recycled cardboard. So these were, this project was birthed from one of its focuses was very much around the kind of upcycling circular economy approach to creative production within interactive arts. So these sculptures are made from recycled corrugated cardboard that was sourced from the community to assemble the kind of complex visual structures that represent different locations. So there's one sculpture that represents a kind of shantytown village that spires upwards over about 2.5 foot. So it's a kind of tabletop sculpture, which has a windmill sat at the very top of it. There's another one called The Factory. There was another one called The Cathedral. There was a fourth one called The Cave as well. And they were all made out of cardboard. So in terms of the kind of visual modality of these sculptures, they were very much from that world of kind of 3D arts and craft using resourceful materials and model building. But the project was involved many more layers in terms of other modal ingredients. So there was also a haptic component to this project whereby, although these works were presented in a traditional arts exhibition setting, there was very much, they were assembled very much for people to become very hands-on with them. So there was a haptic and gestural component to these sculptures where people would feel their way through the sculptures to explore them. And as a result of those interactions, they were, the sculptures would produce sonic outputs as a result of that unguided exploration through these sculptures. And those sonic outputs were basically musical and textural sound effects that would collectively across all of the sculptures soundtrack the exhibition, soundtrack the space that everyone was kind of sharing and exploring within that experience. So and that was realized through the use of interactive sensors. So there was a load of kind of low cost recycled electronic sensors such as kind of flex sensors, dials, infrared sensors, ultrasound sensors, pressure sensors that just kind of was there and ready to detect those levels of interactions from the people that would approach these sculptures. And I think that was the first project that I kind of delivered with this new kind of hat on as the systems creative. Really, it was I wasn't thinking about this project as a music producer anymore, or as a visual artist anymore. I was kind of thinking about it as a multimodal producer. There were many layers at which people could come in and experience these works, and each of those separate layers were rich and diverse experiences in and of themselves, but collectively they were also part of a rich, wide experience as well. So that was again one of the ways that kind of thinking about multimodality has manifested itself in my work really. And lastly, and very quickly, another project in which this kind of mindset has manifested itself is over at my creative ed tech company called pyka. So pyka, we're a collective of music producers who develop interactive sound tools, basically, that increase people's access to musical expression and musical exploration. And very recently, our most recent project, which we're still going through the kind of first early stage R&D process of, is called the Expression Orchestra. And this has been developed in a very similar vein, that it's approached, the way we've approached this project is to think about music experience not as one complex combination of processes and ingredients and skill sets, in the way that a lot of music software, traditional music software, encourages from practitioners, but actually to break that down into single modular ingredients and then materialize that in a way that's very easy for anyone really to access that process. So the expression orchestra is made up of a set of digital instruments that singularly do one thing very, very well and in a very powerful way, but they're very, very simple, basic instruments when engaged with independently or separately from the kind of collection of tools. So we've the photos currently on the screen here show the first exhibition and installation that we had for the Expression Orchestra, which was developed in partnership with Gwyn Special School in Cardiff. And the students at Gwyn actually helped us develop this first round of instruments, really the first instruments that entered the orchestra. One of the instruments was called Focus, and it's a musical instrument that you can engage with through the use of the control of your eyes. The second instrument was called Move, which was built using motion tracking sensors, which meant that you could move in front of an open space to control other elements of a music performance. And then there was a third one called Touch, which actually broke down the traditional multi-touch fine motor programming conventions within kind of touchscreen design, and made it a lot more easier for people with limited mobility in their hands to use touchscreens to generate music in the way that they intend to. So we looked at kind of blob detection and kind of palm detection so that people could use, the sides of their hands, the backs of their wrists, their knuckles, and so on to generate musical outputs without a need for kind of fine-grained motor skills, basically. And this is the collection of instruments that is continuing to develop very much in that vein of thinking very much like a systems creative. So thinking about more of the affordances that we have as individuals. So thinking about more of our senses, more of the kinds of things we can physically do, that we can mentally do, the ways in which we can communicate, and kind of breaking those down to develop more instruments that mean more people can become part of this digital ensemble. And this, as I say, is currently in further development and ongoing development at present as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Leigh. It's really interesting to hear how your perception of your profession and your expertise is developing and growing, and kind of being shaped at the same time as your learning and understanding of what you're working with. And I think, that's something I'd like to pick up on, really, is how we all kind of can share what we're learning and developing, and that kind of understanding of what we're doing, really. So thank you very much. We'll invite you back for the discussion, hopefully all together. But next we've got an artist, Jorge Lizalde. So Jorge, if you're able to share with us some of the amazing work that you've been doing in this area, over to you. Oh, make sure you're off mute, Jorge.
Sorry. Yeah, my name is Jorge, or George, as you like, whatever is easier for you. Spanish born, early 40s, white male, short hair, wearing today a black t-shirt. My professional background is photography and video, but in recent years, I've been more involved in video mapping and video design, especially for theater. And in the last few months, because of COVID, I've been working mainly resolving streaming issues and art projects, streaming issues and kind of video calls as well, live video calls, and also helping them to make them more accessible, integrating live captioning, VSL interpreters, and the video calls on the main windows and the live streams. And here is an example of the video call done last year.
Have you got curly hair, dark hair? I have very short.
As you can see in the video, there's the captioning on the bottom, all integrated, the VSL and the speaker, as well as the participants. So also I received last year an R&D from the Art Council of Wales, and it was focusing mainly on tech and accessibility. And I was there were three areas I was focusing on, and the first one, it was an application I've been working on for a few years now. It's a cinema captioning app Then I've been using on my projections, overlaying the captioning on the projections. But I never managed to do the network ability they has. So thanks to the R&D, now the app can overlay the captioning on the projections, but also you can set up a local network wherever you are in the theater or outside for outside performances. And you can access to it via a website. So every audience member can access via Android, pads, Macs, whatever they are using. You don't need to have this kind of setup of Mac network that some theaters are using at the moment. Also, I've been looking at in recent months how to access this application through my laptop. So everyone on the internet can access to it. And for example, if the video call or the performance is scripted, they can access to that app. That's where I'm queuing it from my site, and then it can overlay on the video call as well as you can access to on a second screen on monitor or on a little window on your laptop. And the last part of the R&D, I was focusing mainly in a sensory vibration sound jacket, because I did an art installation at the Wells Millennium Center a few years ago. And I tried to devise a little jacket for the audiences. But as a hearing person, I realized you cannot recognize where the sound is coming from. So the main interaction of this prototype, it was trying to find out how to make the vibration sound directional. So the person who is wearing it is recognizing where the sound is coming from. There are many jackets on the market where you can feel the sound, but I don't think there is anyone that actually makes you recognize where the sound is coming from. And yeah, I think we should see. I tested with Stelmach. It's a deaf artist, an actress. I think we should share the video. It's video 3, where she's testing it, and also the other one. That's the video too. Sorry, I jumped at it. Yeah. So here is testing it. I put the music a bit lower because of copyrights. And then she's gonna be giving us some feedback of the jacket.
With regards to the jacket, right, so when the first time Jorge told me that he would show, it would be directional, so I would know which way the sound was coming from, I was genuinely really shocked, because I was like, oh right, well the sound will be over there, and I'll know where it's coming from. And I was thinking obviously I've been deaf for so long, I didn't even think about directional sound. And it was really interesting, because it's just such a new concept. And I'll just put this jacket on, and then these different vibrations, these different things that I could feel, and it was so good, myself, to be able to work out where it was coming from. Genuinely, just a really shocking, new, innovative experience. And I was quite excited because I feel the vibration there, either on the front or the back. And another time, I could also feel the vibrations on my arm, and that was a bit what's going on here? I've got this jacket on, I haven't got any sleeves, and so I could sort of feel where the sound was coming from, just because both were working at the same time. And I wasn't expecting that. I was sort of expecting the sound to come from quite specific points, but from how it was sort of moving behind me, how it sort of merged, I could sort of feel where the sound was coming from, but not specifically, if that makes sense. I just think, in an environment like a theatre or something, based on my own personal experiences previously, obviously I can see, but I can't hear anything. I don't know, what's going on. I watch and I get an idea, and I can pick things up, from a visual perspective. But now, having both senses, having that opportunity to feel and see together, that's really quite exciting. And I sort of feel like it's more, I'm more engaged, and I'm more, I can build up that, that better experience because, I have both of them. Like, for example, I don't know, there's an explosion, a big bang, or, something like a thriller that's going to make me jump. I've got that opportunity now, even though I'm deaf, to gain that same experience and have that same sort of immersion into the experience. I think I'm just really excited to see how it develops, really. I think, like I said, it's like something going to be applied to lots of other things. Yes, absolutely theatre, but there's so many ways that this sort of device could be used, and I think that's really exciting.
So yeah, that's the main projects I've been involved. I have as well LED, kind of as a orientation tools, but still early ages. So I don't know if it is worth it to share it. And yeah, hopefully, I will get some more funding or opportunities to continue developing, especially the jacket. They can be really useful for gaming, cinema, or art performances. And that's all.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, George. And it was really amazing to see Steph's response and then to hear her feedback as well. And I think that's something I'd like to discuss with the panel, how we gather feedback, both from the creatives and from audiences, So thank you very much, George. And our final speaker here, we're joined by Rachel, whose role at Disability Arts Cymru, the charity in Wales focusing on creating and sharing opportunities for disabled and deaf people in the arts. And they also deliver art-specific equality and diversity training. Rachel, can you share with us a little bit about your role, which relates to kind of creative tech, and perhaps any good examples you've witnessed of tech being used in this way?
Yep. Okay. So it's great. We've all been trained to do audio description over the last year, isn't it? So I'm a 50-something-year-old white butch-looking lesbian with the big blue glasses, wearing my best shirt. It's blue. It's got lots of herons on it. So yeah, my job title is Officer for Creative Technology and Combined Arts. So it's a very small group within the organisation compared to visual artists and writers and those kind of things. But it's probably the most diverse group because there's no two people that really work in the same way. So it's an interesting group to work with. But I've also, through my own kind of understanding of technology, and I love learning new things, new technologies. So we jumped into Zoom pretty early and started on what turned out to be a series called the Crypt Talks. So if we can have a quick look at that page when you're ready. It's on our website. It's easy enough to find. It's just disabilityarts.cymru/Crypt Talks. Can we go right to the bottom of the page? Start at the beginning. So the idea for this actually came out of a discussion we had about the film Crypt Camp, which is on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, please go and watch it. It's a very entertaining watch, but it also teaches you an awful lot about the development of the disability rights movement in America and how that's affected other countries as well. So that was the first one. We didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't record it, didn't do anything like that. But then this first one, called Discrimination Squared, was the first one we did under webinar conditions, because we realized that that was the best way to be able to show the speaker and the BSL side by side, rather than, the entire kind of gallery view that you get in an open Zoom meeting. So we did this one where we, Johnny Cotson chaired it. We had a couple of artists who had both experienced racism and the effect that that has on their deafness, the kind of the mix between the two things. Really interesting, amazing artists. So that was kind of the very first of the Crypt Talks series. So if we go up one more from there, then we went into dwarfism and the ethics of humour, like you do. Another very, very interesting discussion where one of the artists we'd invited along came and told us that we were exploiting her by only paying her £50, and she was sure that the tech workers who were doing the Palantype and the BSL were getting paid more. So we got ourselves really told off on that one. But the fact is, we were doing this on a shoestring, and you can't not make things accessible when you're a disability arts organisation. So people who do Palantype, people who do BSL, they spend a long time learning, and they're professionals and they deserve to get paid. But so do the artists that are involved in these things. And we did, after a while, we did get some Arts Council funding and were able to pay people properly. So let's scroll up one more. This is a big favourite of mine, because not just because I hosted it, but because it's a topic I'm really, really interested in, and that's autism. Are we a cultural minority? And this kind of came about because we've been thinking about taking on an extra word. So not just disabled and deaf, but disabled, deaf and neurodivergent might be something we take on. So a lot of that discussion is in this particular Crypt Talks. Go up another one or two. So yeah, then we had a two-parter about the music industry. So this first one is where we talked about what are the issues for disabled people in the music industry. And then the next one after that was looking at the solutions and how we identify best practice, and each one of these was hosted by Lloyd Coleman, but we had three different musicians, very different, very diverse spread of musicians. So next one down. This was an interesting one based on a survey we did about young people and disability arts. Oh, Poppy's doing a poo in the corner. Of course she is. Right. Next one down. Thank you. This was a fantastic one. So 3rd of December is International Day of Disabled People, or however you want to phrase it. And we got some amazing campaigners. We had a Deputy Minister, Jane Hart. We had Leigh Davies from Disability Wales, Barbara Lizalde, who is one of the queens of disability activism on that one. Let's go down one more, or up one more rather. Now, we came back to autism with this one, and we actually managed to lure Temple Grandin to come and take part in that. And then we had three other autistic people who came in and spoke to her about very different things. So Ree, who you can see on the screen there, talked about autistic joy, and how do you find your autistic joy and the thing that really makes you bing. So next one down. International Women's Day. This was an amazing one. This was just like wall-to-wall entertainment. You have got to go and see this one. Some extraordinary performances, and just a really, really amazing celebration of International Women's Day. And keep going up, please. Curator Stare. This was done by my colleague Alan, who's the visual arts officer, talking about how do you attract the stare of the curator? How do you get the curator to look at your work, to take it on, to do anything about it? And that's something that all artists struggle with, but disabled artists in particular often feel like they're excluded from this because they're seen it very much in a kind of a disability box. But not all disabled artists are disability arts practitioners. So yeah, we'll keep going, please. Now this is an interesting one because we did this. It's possibly the most complex one we did. And certainly in the editing, I've been editing these videos and I've really learned a lot as I went on. So this one, a lot of the speakers were using Welsh. We had translation so that any non-Welsh speakers through the Zoom could hear the English translation. We also had BSL, we also had Palantype, and what I discovered afterwards that the VTT file from the Palantypist, I was able to burn that into the video so that when people were speaking in Welsh in the video, you can hear them talking in Welsh, but you can see the English subtitles, and that was all totally auto-generated. And I also discovered that by recording 2 different versions of the stream, I could take the BSL interpreter picture in picture, as you can see there, and put that on the screen. So this one, I'm kind of proud of the video I've made out of it. And I would encourage you, I'm probably running out of time, but I encourage you to go look at this one. If you don't want to watch it all, great, but go to 26 minutes and 30 seconds and you'll see Sarah Lawrence signing the Welsh national anthem, and it's just a fantastic piece of theatre. So that's kind of, it's just one of the projects we've been involved in, but I've really learned so much from doing this about the way Zoom works, the way you can make Zoom the most accessible you can. So, you know, by having the option, when people book, we give them the option, do you want BSL? Do you want closed captions, i.e. the captions on the screen, or do you want stream text, which gives you the captions in a separate browser, and also audio description? And then we have a kind of open box for people to say, you haven't listed it, but I need this. So sometimes people will ask for the transcript afterwards because they find focusing and concentrating for that length of time might be difficult. So we have transcripts for all of these. And we're just really doing our best to show best practice in accessibility. And I think it's really filtered out because, you know, look at what we're doing here. We've got BSL, we've got access to captions, we've all been audio describing ourselves. And that really makes a big difference. You know, this isn't a specific disability arts event, yet we are seeing all these things happening. And that's absolutely as it should be. So I think that's probably enough for me, isn't it? Yeah.
That's wonderful, Rachel. Yeah, I mean, it's great that you've shared that website page with like all of that content that you've produced really over the last year or so, you know, that now is there, and hopefully for the audiences watching today and attending to, you know, watching afterwards, they can go and have a look at that. I certainly will. To find out.
And that's just one of our playlists on YouTube. There's others as well, so dig in.
That information building and the brilliant work that you're doing there. Are we able to bring in all of the panelists now, if that's an option? There we go.
Just going to quickly pick up the puppy poo, if you don't mind. I'll be right back.
No worries at all. So thank you, everybody. Really, rich to hear the varied work, really. I don't know if you all already know each other or whether this is kind of new information to you, but hopefully kind of new connections today. So wanted to pick up on a couple of things to start with before if there's any comments from attendees, which I know we have had some. Wanted to start by what Rachel was touching on a little bit there, which is in relation to budget and cost, because, you know, I know very often, Hannah, you talked about it a little bit as well, you know, a lot of creatives, a lot of arts organizations are working project to project, funding to funding. That funding is coming in quite last minute and stuff. And I just wondered, between you all really, what your approach is in terms of prioritizing this, access and consideration of access within your budgets, and how the understanding of that may or may not have improved kind of particularly over the last year. You were nodding there, Leigh. Perhaps we could come to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that resonated with me greatly, and I'll probably partly repeat myself a little bit, but I think part of the process I've gone through my kind of postgrad research recently of redefining that my professional identity is kind of had a lot of that in mind, really. It's that quite often, I think we've all experienced it when you're applying and fund running and bidding for work. These processes are, often compartmentalized into audience engagement, into accessibility, into, other kind of considerations. And that often makes you feel like you're doing more than one job. And it shouldn't really, I don't think it should really feel like that. It should kind of, as I've already said, really, it should be a kind of inherent part of that work that you're kind of going for. So I think in terms of how I've kind of tried to manage that in recent years is to, as I've already said, really broaden my kind of the way I kind of conduct my creative practice by considering multi-sensory design, and then through that process, there's things I'm able to still explore, and I can still explore, as a kind of creative with kind of interests and ambitions, but it means that it just inherently becomes part of that process. So it's not that you suddenly have to split strands of funding necessarily, or as much as you maybe would have in a more kind of traditional specialist kind of hyper-focused kind of creative process. So I think that's kind of how I've started to deal with it. But that is really only just the beginning. I'm just beginning to sort of scratch the surface of that and see how that can really be maximized, really, and be truly inclusive and kind of important in access, really. So
welcome back, Rachel. We were just talking a little bit there about budget, what you touched on, really, the cost, and how we kind of factor that into our work, that this is a big priority, considering access and embedding that within your process from the beginning is a really big priority. Hannah and Ali were talking there about hopes to move your RISE project on in the future, and I just wondered if, in terms of what learnings you might have taken from the first project, how that will affect your planning, I suppose, for the next stage.
I mean, I think, just following on from what's already been said, kind of building in access as essential project costs like anything else, and also thinking about it as a creative possibility rather than an add-on. And that's definitely something that I think we've both been developing within practice anyway. So that's kind of how we want to carry on when we create set, and think, we're creating essentially what is an audio experience in lots of ways with lots of other tactile aspects, but also thinking about how can we make that an equalized experience that anybody can access in different forms. So really developing kind of different versions of the experience alongside each other, so that it hopefully truly is kind of accessible to anyone. And I think, again, that was something really exciting that we discovered last year. It was something we hadn't really considered in some ways about the project, but turning it into an at-home experience meant that suddenly there was reach for people who wouldn't have been able to obviously come out on a walk before, either physically or because of location, geographically, and just kind of really thinking about access in general in a kind of really creative strand, a really creative way.
Definitely. Rachel, it's great to see those videos there and the kind of tools and resources that you're providing through Disability Arts Cymru. And I just wondered, for everyone on the panel, really, how you're building your toolkit. How are you kind of learning, where you're getting your information around what works and what doesn't work? How are you getting feedback as well from your audiences or from the creatives that you work with? If any of you got any sort of interesting ways that you're gathering that data and information, I suppose.
Well, I suppose like everyone, we've just kind of moved into Zoom. That's where we live now. And one of the huge advantages that's happened over this year is the move into online, because there's so many people have attended, the Crypt Talks or some of the other stuff we've done online, have attended group meetings, because we used to work regionally, but now we work across art forms. So if I have a group meeting of my art form, I might have people there from South Wales, from North Wales, from Paris, they'd have never got together in person to talk like that. So just, I really, really want to hang on to that way of working, because for so many people that, you know, maybe they don't get out of the house very often, maybe they can't, maybe there's other things going on, distance, access to travel, all of those things. And I know people are itching to get back to in-person events, but I really, really want to promote the hybrid idea, so that whatever we do in person, it's also broadcast online, either over Zoom or a Facebook or YouTube Live, or both, or recorded, or, you know, so that the access becomes, or, you know, that much wider. So the people who want to come in person and enjoy being in rooms with people, I don't understand it myself, but a lot of people like that stuff. So great for them. But for the people who'd rather be able to do it remotely, they can do that too. So we're actually going to be 40 next year. So we're trying to organize this thing called 40 for 40. So 40 different exciting things that are going to happen over the course of the year. And hopefully they will all be accessible online as well as whatever happens in person. So we might have a multi-stage cabaret where there's, you know, maybe 3 or 4 different venues with 3 performers at each of them. But they're also broadcasting the performances from the other venues. So it could get a bit complicated, but, you know, I think we've learned so much over the year about the Zoom in particular, but new platforms are coming through. There's this, which I'd never heard of until, you know, a week ago. And Hire. I don't know if anyone's heard of Hire. That's a new thing in development that's looking really interesting. So, you know, I just grab all the new technologies and make the best use out of them that we can to make things accessible for our members, really.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure, like, let's know if we can get involved with the 40 for 40. I know that when Creative Cardiff first started, they did 52 things in a year, so like 1 a week. And I know that, you know, it's so much work, but like it's a brilliant idea for celebrating, you know. George, I, you know, we saw there Steph giving her kind of feedback on being, you know, using the jacket. Are there other ways that you've been able to kind of gather feedback on the tools and the tech that you've used, I suppose?
The LEDs, yeah, I got feedback, but the main feedback was you need to have a protocol because it's for visual impaired. So it has to be a standard in every single venue. So that was a setback because from a visual point of view, you are like, okay, this is, yeah, you come in, the LEDs are reacting to you, they're giving you guidance. But from the visual impaired point of view, is more like they need a standard where the venue is, where the doors are going to be. It is the same colors everywhere. So yeah, that was a bit setback and rethinking about the process as well. Yeah, with the jacket, yeah, you guys looking for more kind of how to develop.
Yeah. I'm conscious of time. I just wondered if you had any questions for each other before we close, if there was anything that sparked while you were listening to each other, really. No, if not, then we'll draw it to a close. Thank you so much all for sharing that. I'm sure it'll be, we've had some comments in the chat about how interesting it's been to find out about those. I know this recording will be shared online afterwards as well, so I'm sure we can kind of share links to your various websites and more information there as well. Thank you very much to our BSL interpreters who've been supporting us today, and also to Sophie and Beth behind the scenes who've been supporting on the technology. Thank you for joining us, and hope to see you all soon in person.
Thank you for watching. Rewatch all of our sessions online. Thank you to our partners.